Hello, everyone. This is Dano from Dev Device, and today I have a special guest with me, Mr. Peter, founder of Ampersand Accounting. Hello, Peter.
Hello, Dano. How are you today?
Oh yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I'm already awake. It's like 6:03 in the morning,
Like,
and it was a bit of a late evening last night. But yeah, that's the one of the parts that when you live on the other side of the planet, you have to get up early or stay up late.
well,
That's
hopefully it
part
was
of the
over
game.
a bottle of wine.
Yeah. Yeah, all good, man. So yeah, I invited you to join my podcast just to share your life story because I'm always curious about how successful entrepreneurs, business owners, and founders how they came to the place where they were. Uh, so part of it, of course, is your life circumstances, your mindset. What was happening, how events like piled up upon each other, which I found every time it's quite amazing. To see how things unfolded in people's lives. So yeah, I like to start at the 10-year-old Peter and what was going on with him. Let
10
us
years old.
know.
Yeah, yeah. So 10-year-old Peter was a little asshole. Uh, my parents would be the first to say that. It's an interesting thing. When you're young, depending on how your mind operates, you find yourself very inquisitive in things and very curious, a cause and effect to a fault. I have some great stories. I got in trouble when I was in Boy Scouts and we in scout camp and pranks and all that other fun stuff. But ultimately, later on, they came up with a label for that and they call it ADHD. Um,
Oh.
so what we learned is that the reason why I was always in a million directions at once and why I was so curious about everything was a byproduct of this. Then they got me on some good stuff that helped me really focus down. Then it got scary what we
Mm.
could do. So to give context, I was that kid that was always looking for the loophole for the escape, and that really carries over nicely into tax law, which how I got into the whole ampersand thing.
Mm.
But what was really funny in all this stuff was that it really started out with me trying to figure out how, when I got in trouble with my parents or whatever have you, how did I get out of it? How did I work?
Oh, that's a good approach.
And I was one of five kids, so the whole thing here was, you had to finagle the system, and you had to be smarter than the other ones as well, or else.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so it started out that way, and then where I found myself, oftentimes I was curious about everything and anything. I just wanted to understand why things worked the way they were. And sometimes it was to a fault. I just zero in on certain things, and I would just get passionate about it. I mean, as of recently, like AI for me has just been such a really cool subject. But
Hmm. Oh
and
yeah,
I
we
found,
talk a lot about that one.
oh man, I'm telling you, and I found myself, once it grabs my attention, I can't let it go until I fully understand it. I
Hmm.
will read every last little piece of material that there is that exists in that thing until I know it front, back, left, and right. And that really helped carry over again, as I progressed and I grew up a little bit and stopped, focusing on the childish things and started focusing more on the adult things. Now, I'll be
Hmm.
the first to tell you I'm a kid at heart. And everyone in my company will tell you that as well. We try to laugh in everything we do.
Hmm.
But there was a lot of tough lessons early on in my life, trying to figure out, for many of other individuals that may go through ADHD as adolescents, as kids, your awkwardness and trying to figure out who you really are and what you represent and what you want to be. Now, most of those questions are going to change on a daily basis. But, really understanding yourself changed a lot for me because once I really could understand who I am and embrace those components of myself, the sky became the limit. And instead of having insecurities, it was just curiosities and going down different rabbit holes.
So,
So
so
as
which
a
part did you understand? So, what was the first thing you understood about yourself? Like who you are, like what is your
I
passion? What
found,
is your
I found out my resiliency when I spent a couple years on sabbatical abroad. I had gone on a religious mission, and
Hmm.
during that time, did a lot of soul searching. But the beauty of it all was I ended up living in Argentina for 2 years while I was doing all this.
Oh.
I think that every American should get out of the U.S. for a certain period of time, if nothing else, to see the world and understand other psychologies that aren't our own. That was really when my eyes opened up to everything and what was going on around me. Was when I was living in Argentina. I was going, didn't have anything to my name at that point, just going around helping people, doing good things. And it was really intriguing because first and foremost, all my stimuli was getting just knocked all over the place. I had to learn another language, which was Spanish. And for a while, I lived in the countryside in Argentina called Mendoza. And if you've never heard of that, it's pure wine country. You've probably heard of Mendocino wine, Argentina, Mendoza wine. So I lived out where these, what they call fincas or vineyards are. A lot of these experiences led to making me to who I am today. Interacting with different types of people, the mindset that was down there in Argentina, how they approach problems can be very impressive versus how we do it here in the United States. Actually, and the crazy thing is I was living in Argentina in 2001 through 2003, which was when their entire economy collapsed. That was when they defaulted on their loans. And it was a very humbling experience as well, because while I was living there, the peso was pegged to the US dollar 1-for-1. Overnight, it went 1-4, and then 1-10. And the earnings didn't go up for the Argentines. And the government locked them up and said they couldn't buy dollars or anything else. They had to stick with this currency. There was a lot of protests in the streets. There was a lot of things going on around me. And there was a lot to learn from that as well, from that experience, understanding the importance of being a little bit conservative sometimes and having some emergency stashes when you need it. We found ourselves sometimes in the most rural of areas with the humblest of people, but with the biggest of hearts. And that taught me a lot about, the importance of compassion and empathy. You get out there and these people will make sacrifices to have a meal with you and break bread. And they may forego another meal or something like that while you're there. But they care so much about that interaction and that dialogue. It was heartbreaking and humbling at the same time. But what I learned from that lesson in Argentina was the importance of humanity. And no matter how or what I ended up doing, that I should not trade off my humanity for anything after learning it from living abroad. I didn't just stop at Argentina. So I ended up working for a company called Rosetta Stone for a little while. And during my tenure at Rosetta Stone, found myself once again being that asshole kid where I was a snot-nosed kid right out of college, working at a pretty big company at the time when I had joined them. And I was at the bottom of the totem pole as some snot-nosed college kid. By the time I had left the company, again, that whole inquisitive curiosity thing, some management liked it, other ones didn't like it because they felt a little threatened by it. Other ones understood how to embrace it and harness it. But the long and the short of it all is I ended up spending a year in Colombia, a summer in Bolivia, some extended time in Peru, and a fair amount of time in Mexico. And I'll share my Mexico story and how I ended up getting out.
Wow. So you're a South American expert, basically.
I don't know. I know how to get in trouble down there, but so that qualifies it as an expert for sure. But really, I don't know about expert, but it's just more a fan of the flavors, a fan of the culture. The food, the vibrancy, the one thing I love about Latin America versus the US is that they're very, very friendly people. Very, very sociable,
as opposed to Americans.
Yes, that are very cold and rigid. And why are you talking to me? So
I thought that was a German trait, but it might be common in the northern hemisphere somehow.
Just go to New York. You'll see it firsthand.
All right.
But the long story short is I ended up, when I was at Rosetta Stone, I built out international for them from 0 to 6 million in under 3 years. By the time I left Rosetta Stone, I reported directly to the CEO of the company, Tom Adams. This was over a 3-year period. I went from the bottom of the totem pole all the way up. I thought for sure a lot of times they're going to fire me because I was being just such a pain, asking these questions that were pointed. And the lower level managers couldn't stand me. The upper level managers loved me because they didn't have to give me a lot of leadership or guidance. I could just run with whatever it was. So then all of a sudden I started getting into some really crazy things where I started working directly with foreign governments in Latin America with Rosetta Stone, effectively doing what they call, they were nationwide ESL projects, or English as a second language.
Mm-hmm.
It was really fun to see that side, because in that point in my life, I was performing services that helped humanity. So in Colombia, they wanted to counteract the narco or the FARC activity that they had there before they got peace. And so one of the initiatives agenda that they had was if they could provide education for those in these rural, poor areas, that they could actually acquire and obtain work, that they wouldn't join these forces if they had another option. So we found ourselves in some of these cases trying to combat this with various forms of education, and then ESL was a big part of all that. So, the way we would do this is that we would work with them. They would get certification from the government, and then they were employable directly to work in the hospitality sector and restaurants and all kinds of other things. So in that part of my life, I was very passionate about what I was doing, especially the fact that it was counteracting narco and FARC activity. Like, who knew that you'd be involved? I guess the saying's the pen's mightier than the sword, as they say. So in this case, that's what we were doing. My last stint in Latin America, and this is what ultimately led me to come back to the US and stay and get centric more into finances and more advanced things, was that I found myself down in Guadalajara. We ended up meeting with the former president of Mexico, Vicente Fox, in his compound. Very, very interesting person, to say the least. And we walk in his compound, and we were led under the premonition that we were going to be working with him on a project he had to counteract narco activity in Mexico and Guadalajara by providing basic education. And so that completely aligned with our ESL objective, what we were doing and trying to help out in those areas. So I show up at his compound, and the first thing is he says, "Look, I like your product." And I'm like, "You haven't even seen it." I didn't say that to him, but I'm like, "You haven't even seen it." And he goes, "Well, he's like, and I can help you guys. I think I can help you guys grow in this market." And we're like, "Phenomenal. What can we do?" And he's like, "I need you to pay me $50,000 cash money, and I will endorse you with my friends. And that's all you need." And I was just like, I look at him and I'm like, "I'm from the US for starters. I'm not going to jail over this." Like, I don't know what this means, but
that was his opening speech, like, bribe me and I'll help you grow your business.
Out of the gate, right in his compound. He had flexed. he had flexed on us hard, though. He had his own cook there. He had this entire setup. He showed. He had all this historic Mexican paraphernalia. He had already wowed us with his location, and so he came in with the ask. Well, we thought he was nuts. And at the time, we were working with a Canadian company, and so we reached out to the Canadian company and said, "Hey, is this legit?" And they said, "Actually, if you remember BlackBerry and RIM, they said that BlackBerry used to fly down with a bag full of money from Canada, and they would give this guy that money in exchange for removing certain barriers with BlackBerry in the Mexican market and getting access to like Carlos Slim and some of these other things." So
there you go.
Yeah. Well, there's this little thing here in the U.S. called the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. So that quickly removed me from that dialogue real fast, because it wasn't worth it. But what ended up happening was kind of interesting. Later on in that day, we ended up going to a tourist location to observe what they call Clásico, which is a big football or soccer match between two of the major cities in Mexico. And I had a buddy with me at the time, and he used to be a journalist. He was actually a reporter, and he had done some TED Talks and some other things, reporting in the Africa region and some of the factions there and how they were surviving. So he was a big fan of, photos and the story behind everything and all that fun stuff. So a lot of people are packed here. This is a Clásico. And so he's just snapping photos, just, capturing the energy. All of a sudden, a guy in the corner points at him, and he comes racing back to the table that I'm sitting at. We're sitting outside. He took photos inside. And I was like, boy, you got over here pretty quickly. You all right? He's like, oh, everything's fine. Like, okay, great. Long story short, 3 guys show up and then a cop. And I'm like, yeah. I was like, what did you do? And he's like, I didn't do anything. So one of the guys started talking to me, speaking to me. He says, look, we're gonna need your phone or your buddy's phone. He took photos he shouldn't have taken. And I was like, okay. And my buddy just looked at me. He's like, no way. I was like, you're gonna do whatever they say. I said to him, I look at the other guy. So they at this point now they're curious about us, and I'm smart enough to know to play coy to some of these things. And so they're like, well, what are you doing here? And I'm like, oh, we're just tourists, typical U.S. government response kind of thing like that, where you're like, oh, you're not a tourist. But, that kind of quick response. So, oh, we're just here to see the sights, take pictures of everything, we're having a beer here, whatever have you, just enjoying the warm atmosphere. And he says, I'm going to need you to delete that photo, and that photo. And I look at my buddy and I say, delete those now. And so he deletes them. And so the guy goes out. He walks away. He says, okay, you guys are good. Have a nice day. And I look at my buddy and I said, we're going to the airport right now. I was like, we're not going to give them enough time to do the due diligence to figure out who we are. That was my last time working in Latin America.
Wow. So what pictures did he take that were so suspicious or so?
Probability is that he may have caught a local leader hanging out with a government official or something at this event. And so
it was about people. He just photographed the wrong people, so to say.
The wrong time. Just happened to be one of those things. Fortunately, as they say in the old DuckTales cartoon, Launchpad McQuack says any crash landing you can walk away from is a good one. So in that sense, we walked away from that one, but a lot of valuable lessons were learned that day. Right. I have spent a lot of time abroad doing all kinds of very cool projects with different things. And so I always got some kooky story about getting in trouble somewhere in some part of the world.
Sweet, man. So how did you start your whole Latin American journey in the first place? I mean, it's not the normal thing to do, right? For someone in the US to go to Argentina and spend like so much time over there. So what was the trigger for that?
It was a region I had volunteered, and it was a region that had been identified that needed assistance, or just some, volunteer work and that kind of stuff. And so, young snot-nosed kid out of high school just wants to get as far away from home as possible and, kind of figure things out. So Argentina seemed far enough away.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
But I'll tell you, it started out as just escaping, but I learned so much appreciation for where I'm from, and the benefits and privileges we have here.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I agree. It's if you never left the country you're born in, I think there's something wrong. Yeah, you're really missing out on the big picture and what else is happening on this planet, because every culture, every nation, every country is just such a small fragment of the big thing. And things run very differently in other places. Yeah. And when I was 10 years old, I had lived in 5 countries.
Oh, wow.
So I had a bit of traveling experience myself, but yeah, I can relate to your desire to, to see something else and to explore the world. And I also appreciate how you want to help other people and how you are like a kind-hearted person. I think that's a great quality to have.
I think I was trying to counteract all my younger asshole activity.
on your assholeness. Yeah. So it was nicely balanced out. Yeah, cool. So you decided to kind of complete your South America journey and return to the US, and what was your next step from there?
So I immediately got back from Latin America, and my phone was ringing off the hook because there was a lot of tech companies. Everybody wants to get into this market. But they don't understand the work that's involved with entertaining, with penetrating into these types of markets and getting into them. So, your phone rings off the hook with all kinds of entrepreneurs calling up saying, "Hey, we'll take care of you. Don't worry about it. But we want you to help us expand there." And I always end up telling them the same thing, which is you're going to spend 3x the amount of money and 3x the amount of time, but when it's all said and done, you'll earn 3x the amount of money as well. That's just how Latin America functions. And so, you know, a lot of businesses, they want instant gratification. They want that money today or whatever have you. And so I found myself, you know, more intrigued with Latin America as a place to maybe visit and to live, but less from a working environment. Well, that's when I started fast forwarding to about 10 years ago. And I got in, you know, always had that entrepreneurial spirit, always wanted to like build things and break things and then build it again and all that fun stuff. And ended up going to, you know, along with that storyline with building and breaking things, worked for various different companies for a while. And then eventually opened up my own Amazon e-commerce store where I was doing retail arbitrage.
Welcome to the club.
When
was that?
Retail arbitrage, small middle of nowhere, Virginia.
And retail arbitrage. So you were walking around stores and picking up some discount products and sending them to Amazon. Wow.
Exactly. So this was like
a manual task, man.
Yeah, this is 2014, 2015. And I was just doing this for fun. It was like, you know, you scan an item and you look at your scanner and it'll tell you how much profit margin you had. Depending on the price and all.
I had that thing on my phone. I remember. Oh my God, yeah. I remember walking around in Malaysia with this scanner, like.
Some of those people were pretty serious. Like they'd have like a whole wristband and everything, and I mean, they had the entire setup. But you know, so I started dabbling in e-commerce. Was really fascinating to me because this was very against what the norm was here in this culture and society. But I think a lot of us could also see that this was where everything was trending. Now, this was pre-pandemic. Nobody could have imagined that the pandemic was going to occur and what was going to happen was going to happen. But, you know, it still seemed like a really intriguing area where things were going to grow. And there was a lot of room to kind of carve out your space in this industry. When I worked a lot in Latin America, Rosetta Stone, Rosetta Stone was too cheap to pay for professional translators. And so this was a publicly traded company. And when you do a $5 or $6 million deal with the Colombian government, they want to report it to the street. Well, they didn't want to spend the money. And so what happened was they would just have me directly translate the legal and accounting docs. Well, if you've ever worked in accounting or legal, you'll understand that it's a completely different language, even if it's in English. Because
I know. It baffles me until today. So when I try to read these things, I'm like, what?
Exactly. So what ended up occurring was
thereafter.
And then so it was insane. So we found ourselves. So what they had to do is then the lawyers and accountants had to give me a crash course on law and accounting, on corporate law and accounting. And you know, I got to study under some of the best and brightest that were there, you know, Yale educated, etc. People much smarter than myself, or at least I consider them.
That was your first encounter with accounting.
Yeah.
To translate documents from English to Spanish, or the other way.
Correct. And to be able to do that, you have to understand the accounting language, and you can't just understand the accounting language. To understand just the language without understanding the law and everything behind it is just like saying, well, I sing in my car, so I'm a professional singer. There's a lot of nuances. And so, you know, there was a lot I had to learn on the fly, especially with tax treaties between the United States and Colombia. There was all kinds of things that I had to figure out, or, you know, what a certain word might mean in context in English versus Spanish. So I didn't just have to understand law and tax. I had to understand it better than everybody else so that I could explain it. And so that's
a long journey if you haven't studied. I mean, this is like a whole education. For years, people study law, right? And I mean, this is not something you pick up from Google.
6-month crash course, my friend.
6-month crash course. So you actually had your law exam done within 6 months?
No, I'm talking about just with the team's internal. And then referencing with the educational material that I had. So that was just the beginning of things. That was, okay, now I realize I like the subject. And so now we went down that direction from there. Because in so doing, that's where I discovered, again, my little asshole kid side came out, where taxes have all kinds of laws and loopholes.
Mm-hmm.
And, find the right loophole. It doesn't matter what they say or do. They got to abide by that law. And so you can imagine this kid comes back out and he's like, "Whoa, this is fun."
Oh.
So I can't do that, but I can do this. And I can't do that, but I can do this. Let me give you a great example. The United States, and this is how crazy we are here in the US from a tax law perspective. You've probably heard of marijuana or cannabis, right? That's a new thing that's very popular going on along everywhere. Well, the U.S. stigma with it and the war against drugs and the illegality and all that other stuff. Here's the insanity of U.S. law. Hemp and CBD is now protected under the U.S. Farmers Act, which means they can't make it illegal. They can't ban it. It's protected under federal law. Access to THC in the United States is not illegal. Access to THC derived from cannabis is illegal. Just the source.
All right.
That's the insanity of U.S. law. Or tax law perspective, if a candy bar was made with flour as an ingredient, as a cooking ingredient, flour, versus like a Kit Kat versus a Snickers.
Mm-hmm.
And they're treated completely different in certain states.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Or in New York, if you just sell a bagel versus cutting the bagel and putting cream cheese on it, it's taxed differently.
Ah. You have a lot of time, huh? To
well,
to tax this and that all differently, like it's cream cheese or no cream cheese.
All I can say is my wife rolls her eyes at me a lot when I talk about these things.
Yeah, but I understand. Yeah, it can be fun to discover these things and maybe give people advice. 99% of the population is not aware, I guess, of all these different aspects of tax law and how they might benefit. So that's, where you come in.
I got a great story there too. Getting in trouble again, kind of thing like that. But ultimately, what happened is once I started breaking into e-commerce, 2015, 2016, they didn't care about sales tax back then. It wasn't even on anybody's radar. It wasn't even considered at this time because nobody really was taking e-commerce serious.
Yeah.
So what ended up occurring is that they let it slide, and then 2017 came around, and then states like Colorado just started enacting laws that were against the federal.
I've been there. Yeah, I was on the receiving end of this thing as an Amazon seller when the first letters came in. When I think California was the fiercest one, and I saw my business going to dust. Because I thought, if they come and collect back the sales tax that I owe them for the past several years, I might as well just close shop and walk away. I mean, there's no way to kind of to overcome this, right?
They built some loopholes that we found at that point, by the way, because they realized they're going to bankrupt a lot of business. And so, unfortunately, this is my belief. I don't know if it's accurate or not, but my perception is that often when state and local governments run low on revenue, they always penalize small business to cover the shortfall that they have.
Nice.
And it seems that way just because small business doesn't have the firepower to get the lawyers to ante up and go after that thing.
Yeah, I mean, which SME owner can afford like these? I mean, the lawyer fees, you might as well just call it quits. That's all you can do.
So that brought me into a whole new thing that I never really understood before, which is I got to be a hero again. And being the hero in this case was talking to different business owners, hearing their story, getting to know them. And like you, many of them, got notifications from California. And so, I had cases where I had this sweet little lady who was operating a nonprofit out of her synagogue in California, followed through with the whole subject and auditing them and everything else and all that other stuff. And I was just, at that point, then you ante up and you're definitely on side of the people you're representing and not feeling any problem going after California with their loophole. So it turned into, I found a way to redirect my inquisitiveness and my interest in helping people in a very weird subject in tax and accounting.
Mm-hmm.
We have found ourselves since then with a 95+% success rate with audit defenses when we have to do them. I'm the nuclear option when we have audits. So what happens is that I'm very well versed in the state tax laws in the U.S. and so on and so forth. And so when the auditors don't want to play nice with us, I'm the guy they call into the meeting, and then nobody's.
Mm-hmm.
And then, once I leave the meeting, they love the other guy that they were working with before. We're back into the meeting. We're good. So.
Oh, wow. So you're the wild dog who scares everybody, and then they're so happy to have the other guy to work with.
The
Okay.
part is that, when you get to know me, you just know I'm a big goofball, but I got to be hard. And when you go after people I care about, I take it personal, and so I carry a big bat as well, in that sense. But I have found over the years nothing more. I joke with my people internally all the time, and I tell them, if I could do one thing all day, every day, it would not be managing and running a business. It would be just doing audit defense all day, every day.
Oh,
There's nothing more fun to me. I'll tell you.
Wow. So you're really living your passion, huh?
Not anymore, because I'm managing now. I can't.
Oh.
So they only pull me in every so often to do it.
Oh.
But it's interesting because the first rule of thumb when dealing with an audit defense, the states already know they have the upper hand, and people are always terrified anytime they receive any documentation from the state. And the auditors thrive off of that power run. So the first thing I learned, one of the biggest things I learned from one of the best and brightest in the industry is the first thing you do is you punch them in the mouth. Verbally, obviously, not, literally. But you hit them back.
Yeah. Side note, not literally.
That's illegal. And then I'll go in jail.
All right. But then I'm curious about the metaphorical punch in the face.
So, there's an old saying by Mike Tyson, and that is, everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, auditors don't have a plan when they get punched in the face because they're so used to having the higher ground. It catches them off guard. Then they don't know what to do. They don't know what you don't know. Why are you in that meeting at that point? How can they get you out of that meeting as quickly as possible? Because they're then having an issue. The long and the short of it is that states take advantage in a lot of times of retailers, and they know they have the upper ground. Well, when they're a lot better than them, then you say, you can't do that. Why did you do that? Then all of a sudden they're in trouble. They realize and you caught them. Well, then that story.
So there is actually a law that would protect the retailers, and you just happen to know these these laws, yeah.
State by state, and that's just the benefit of learning from some of the people I learned from, because they would be in those rooms. For example, the hotel industry is really run by 4 big families, and so what happens is that the 4 families show up each state, and they have a meeting with the state officers and talk about what the taxes are going to be, but they're present in that meeting. Learning a lot of how those things functions from behind the scenes. You better understand their inner workings, and it's similar to any bully. Auditors tend to be bullies in some cases, and so like any bully, when you start to push back, they don't like it because then they have to actually work harder. And so usually once we've made it difficult, it seems very counterintuitive, by the way. I've had clients like blush and just be like, please don't create any more, don't create any more problems with the state. I don't want them to come after me. Like, first and foremost, they don't care about you. If you think they're going to hold back because you're a nice guy, I got something coming. I had the state of Utah. I had an auditor overstep his boundaries, and we had power of attorney, and he was trying to shake down our client. So he was not communicating with us directly. He was going directly to the client, and the client did not want to issue records outside of the state of Utah because we told her not to, because it wasn't the state of Utah's problem. And they were starting to threaten her, and they were getting pretty nasty. And finally, I came over top and I said, look, I was like, first and foremost, we're going to need a new auditor. And I said, secondly, I want to go all the way up the ladder. I don't care about your supervisor. I want to go up to the next one. And I said, for violation of POA in Utah law, you can't legally do that. You can't shake my client down, especially when power of attorney is in place. You should have seen how quickly the state snapped to on that one.
Boy, that was a punch in the face right there.
Exactly. That's the kind of advantage and privileges the state will take. Thinking that you don't know any better, and because you're afraid of the state, and they're shaking down your client, you're, when you punch them in the mouth in that kind of a situation, all of a sudden they change their attitude. As a matter of fact, they're much more friendly to you going forward after that, because they view you as a threat, not as a peer or as prey.
Well, it's a bit sad, right, to hear that how little they care about people and their business and their livelihoods, how they just come and just smash them down with no mercy. I mean, that's so cruel.
When we went to California and I talked, I was speaking all the way up at a pretty high level in that state to some pretty influential management. And I said, look, you're going to bankrupt every freaking business if you follow through with this thing. But this was with California when they were getting ready to hand out those Nexus questionnaires that you got. First thing they did is they subpoenaed Amazon to turn over all third-party seller data. So that's how they got your information. And then when you try to register with the state, what they did is they gatekeep the registration. So you'd come in with, for example, deaf device, and they would say, well, hang on, we see that there's a deaf device that's been selling on Amazon since 2017. We don't see that you have a California, sales tax license. Would you like to divulge a little bit more here? Because we have questions now. And so that was, in and of itself, those desk audits were, it was meant to pass on California's debt issues, in my opinion, personally, towards the constituency there. Tax law, believe it, taxes in the U.S. actually contribute towards our economic reporting. So other things that people don't understand is that if you get charged sales tax twice, it's your right to recoup it back from the state. So if they double charge you, or you paid for sales tax and you do a dropship company, and then you then turn around and you have to pay sales tax to the state, you can recoup that delta. So we've worked with some drop shippers where they would, we recoup the 6 to 10 points in sales tax that they were paying out and losing. But effectively what we've seen more and more as time has gone on, the pandemic and everything else proceeding, we find ourselves now becoming in a fact that this industry is now normalized and regular, and that is e-commerce. It's such a journey since 2017, 2018, when nobody even thought twice about it. And the attention it gets now in this time and age is incredible. It's to me, I feel lucky to be alive, to be able to watch all this progression.
And you have a lot of work to do, I guess. I mean, with your, tell me a bit about Ampersand. So, it was founded when?
2017. So effectively.
17.
So what happened is Rosetta Stone opened my own e-commerce business, and I reached out to some peers of mine. I said, guys, nobody's charging sales tax here. Do I need to charge sales tax? Because if I charge sales tax, then they have a competitive advantage over me. Going to my corporate buddies who have been dealing with this day in, day out forever. And they said, from a corporate perspective, you're going to charge it and you're going to do it and you're not going to think twice about it. So I said, well, is there anything in the pike that's going to require and enforce some level of compliance with this? And they said, absolutely. And here are contacts that are telling us this. So then all of a sudden we could see the writing on the wall. So we opened up our doors in 2017 as a services firm. And we were just managing the software, sales tax software solutions, like TaxJar or Avalar or whatever have you.
TaxJar sounds familiar.
And so we would just manage it. If the state sent inquiries, rather than the clients having to deal with the states, we'd go and deal with all those things directly. We slowly learned the inner workings of states and how they do things and their minutia. It's like a military perspective. You're always observing, you're always looking for the weak spots, trying to find, the best approach and that kind of stuff. Terms like shaping the battlefield and that kind of stuff carries into this kind of stuff. But the long story short is that 2018 came around and the Supreme Court in the U.S. overturned Quill Wayfair, which pretty much said the states now have carte blanche to do whatever they want to do going forward. And the third-party retailers and the feds have no say on this going forward until the feds actually enact law. Now, most of us thought that was putting a proverbial metaphorical gun to the Fed's head to enact legislation, potentially making it almost like VAT, where it's just a flat rate across the board. It never got the momentum. The states said, states started throwing a temper tantrum because they said, if you do this, you're stripping our power, our right to do things. It got ugly real fast. And so now we operate under the premonition that the United States has 10,000 different countries that you have to figure out the tax for. So we ended up building internally automations, just simple things that we hacked together, nothing crazy. But then, when that California situation hit back in 2019, we got inundated. We were getting, 10 to 20 clients a day coming in.
What?
Yeah, because everyone had those Nexus questionnaires like you did, and so people were terrified. It was a very scary subject. The states weren't giving very good guidance, obviously, other than just to create more, fear. And there weren't many people that knew how to handle it. Now, we have 2 ex-California auditors in our team. So we also have a little bit of knowledge on some of that stuff. But
you recruited the enemy.
Yep. And they'll tell you, we refer to it the dark side and the light side. So they had to work over the dark side before they came to the light side.
Nice.
We joke about that. But, long story short, we quickly realized that human error was always going to be an issue. And so as long as we had humans directly involved with the processes without some form of systems in place to have better, greater transparency, we were doomed to fail. And then as long as we were at the mercy of the other, software solutions, we were, if they had a bad day, then we had a bad day as well. And so we realized that we could lose our business overnight, at the mercy of these other third-party solution providers. So being the nerds that we are and the inquisitive types that we are, we started learning coding, and we started building.
So you built your own accounting software from within the company. Wow. Yeah. What is it called again?
It's called Aqueduct.
Aqueduct. Yeah, exactly. Aqueduct.
And so, so I know every line of code in there, and I've had projects.
What? Now you are a coder as well?
I'm a coder. I'm a tax expert. I mean,
come on. What else, man? Just to learn coding is quite a journey.
And I even make a mean omelet too. But it comes down to that.
You're full of surprises, man.
You would have fun on a vacation with me because I'm always getting into trouble, but it's fun. It's enjoyable.
There's always a happy ending somehow.
We you just find that hole in the wall restaurant that nobody's looking at, and all of a sudden it's Anthony Bourdain style kind of thing like that. So never a dull day with me. You'll find that out. But long and the short of it all is that we found a nice little niche. Now we ended up, once we started building out the tool, and we started getting more increased demand, we realized we couldn't just stop there. So then we started bringing dedicated full-time engineers and developers. For example, our lead engineer actually oversaw the databases at FedEx, which is a monster behemoth player. Those kind of things and that kind of stuff. And so effectively what we've been doing now at this point is we're just kind of, making our way down the road, enjoying life and trying to figure out different ways to break things and then put them back together and make them better.
Wow. So you have this flood of clients running, through your door without having to do any acquisition or marketing. So that part is obviously not an issue. And then now you have your software, your Aqueduct, which kind of takes care of the whole processing stuff.
Oh yeah.
And you can just sit there and travel around and make omelets.
Dano,
that's a good life, man.
If I could sit still, I would. But then I get curious again, and I start flowing with things. And so,
which brings us to the next obvious question: how do you implement AI?
Oh my God, I love it.
So that's gonna take another. Sorry, guys. So we have another hour to go here.
I can go all day on AI. The different training models, how it happens, how it works, where we're heading with this, and we have so much AI incorporated. It's actually been for us.
You have already. So it's already part of your Aqueduct system.
Day one, when we were building this, you could read the writing on the wall with AI. And we started building Aqueduct back in 2021. This was pre-ChatGPT days, but ChatGPT 1 and 2 I think were coming online at that point. Back then, we that is such cool material. And let's talk about how AI learns. So we're really going to nerd out here in a fun way. There are two types of learning models when it comes to AI. So everyone panics right now. You're hearing all this stuff about AGI, right? And Elon Musk and all these people sign this thing. Well, first and foremost, they're full of crap. So Elon Musk was asking for a 6-month reprieve so that he could build his own, what do they call it, Truth API or Truth AI or something like that now. There are two types of learning models when you're training AI. There's supervised and unsupervised. Supervised effectively means that you put specific terms in place, and you tell the AI to categorize based off of those terms that you preset for it. And so everything's categorized based off the guidance you gave it, and so it's not leaving the confines of those swim lanes. Now, what ends up happening on the unsupervised model, which is the one that everyone's interested in, and also everyone's afraid of as well at the same point, is that effectively what you're doing is you're dumping a lot of data into these neural nets. And then the neural nets are looking for commonalities and clusters. They call it clusters. They're looking for clusters and commonalities or patterns that they can lump things. And so it's not being instructed, it's just doing it based off the patterns it identifies. This is where the fear comes in that AI could potentially see, could in these clusters can draw different interpretations than some of these other things. But long story short is that, it's going to become a case where there's going to be two types of people. There are going to be those that work with AI that have a job and those that don't.
Don't both, don't work with AI and don't have a job.
Pretty much.
I agree. Yeah, I think it's a revolution that if you cannot afford to ignore it. Yeah.
They're going to expect productivity to shoot up now going forward. And so by osmosis, you're going to have to use AI to keep up.
Yeah.
With the expectations. But I'll tell you, that's a fun field to mess with.
You have invested a lot of time, I guess, messing with it and playing around with it. I mean, just the amount of tools out there is just that alone is just completely flattering.
A lot of them have a common source with ChatGPT. Yeah. So the back-end engine is ChatGPT for a lot of those things. But I mean, when you're looking at it now, understand that the way these things operate, first and foremost, they're anticipating what you're asking before you ask it. So as you start writing the question, it's based off a law of averages. It's drawing a conclusion on what you're going to say for the rest of that question, which allows it to respond much faster because it's already anticipating. It's responding, and it's responding in a way that we've never seen before.
Yeah, it is. It is quite mesmerizing. Yeah. So if you would give someone today as a business owner, maybe a bit too general, but let's say entrepreneurs in the e-com space to use AI, what would you say?
First and foremost, get familiarized with basic commands in AI. We haven't gotten to programming languages with AI yet. It's still very rudimentary, but you can expect that there will eventually be, they'll have a term for how you communicate with the AI, and it'll be a specific language. Right now, what you have to do if you want to be successful is set the AI up with preset models. So if you can show it an example, it can learn from that and build off of it. And so if you want to be successful with AI, what you got to do is give it data to work with, either in your transactions or in your business or other components. And then from there, let it grow and compound. And the more data you can add to it, the more accurate it gets. So things that you could do in AI, for example, is you can incorporate transaction amounts, when they sold, what products sold, when, what timeline, what was the weather out, what were the market conditions when it sold. These things can eventually find different clusters and then, abnormalities that all of a sudden we realize when this one thing clicks, the entire market responds a certain way.
Kind of predict market behavior and shopping behavior for your store. Okay, well, that's a cool idea.
And then the other piece is
Like
that
Black Friday, whatever,
yes,
so to train, it's like what happened the last 3 Black Fridays, and then kind of make it to give a prediction. Yeah.
yep, that's one piece. The other thing is that you're going to find a lot of small businesses quickly pivoting to use AI to cover the shortfall that they can't afford and all this extra personnel, marketing, accounting, and these other things, which is completely understandable. Just because you're using the AI and it's AI doesn't mean you should just trust it out of the gate.
Yeah,
So when
I
it's
agree.
giving these types of recommendations and it's doing these types of things with your business and you're expanding with it, you have to consistently check on just to make sure it's consistent with what you want. So what the future will be micromanaging AI. And so the two pieces of advice I would give anybody right now in small business space looking to expand, I would say first and foremost, get comfortable with training AI with basic models and communicating with it. I mean, you can have a conversation with it, in ChatGPT's case, and you can get really familiarized with how it operates. And then the second thing is that learning, when and how you should be checking it and utilizing it within your business and where you can save money and cut corners to be more competitive. The other area.
Yeah. So if I have my ChatGPT account and let's say I write listings in a certain way or product descriptions, will it learn from my style and will it kind of adapt to how my listings are written, and then maybe also consider competitors' listings? So will it kind of be able to take note of all these things that are out there and then write a new listing which is congruent with what the ones I have shown it?
All you have to do is just take one of your prior written descriptions, feed it in there, and how it's written before. I need you to do it for this product.
Yeah. But I have to manually feed it in. I have to copy paste the text into it. I mean, today we don't have there's like the missing link to me. The obvious one is like, why can't you go out in the internet and look up a URL or maybe, so that is still, I guess, but I heard there is a plugin for Chrome now, which kind of connects ChatGPT to the internet, so it can actually go outside of the box and look out on the web.
I'll take it even further. If you haven't tried Bing's AI, they ChatGPT and they took it to another level. If you use Microsoft Edge, you can have your Bing side by side with a web page you're looking, and you can ask the AI about that web page you're looking at. Okay,
that's a good one. That I didn't know. Yeah, that's very cool.
You can have the AI assist you with what you're looking at and giving you feedback and data.
Oh man, I'm gonna try that today, man.
I'm gonna give you one final AI tip.
Oh yeah, let's go.
Excel. Can you open up a blank Excel real quick? I don't know if you can share.
A blank Excel. I'm not a big fan of Excel, honest. I do everything in Google Sheets, but I have it here. Let me see how fast it can open. Excel.
I'll show you. In Excel, they've now embedded ChatGPT.
Shit. I saw something in Skype. When Skype now has this little new chat person which says, "Hey, can I help you?" I haven't tested it, but I guess all Microsoft products will come up with this AI integration, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you're able to, if not, don't worry about it. It's if you're looking at your ribbon on your Excel, it's all the way to the far right.
Okay.
And it's like formula or something like that.
Okay, let me. I have something open here. It's updating something. And never mind. Maybe we can just share a screenshot later. But you're saying it's when you have a new sheet open, then on the top right, where the formula is, on the top left, right, where you would enter the formula stuff.
At least on the English version, on the far right. I'll get you a screen. But effectively,
I have something open now. Okay, let me see. Present. Share screen.
And by the way Microsoft's doing it right now, effectively in the next 6 months, you'll be able to just give voice command and it'll build the app based off the command you give it.
Oh,
that's coming in the pike right now. Perfect. All right. So if we go to the top right, you see analyze data.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Now there's no data. Yeah. Try an example.
Okay.
See that?
Mm-hmm.
You could ask. So here's where your Excel now becomes a database. And
Ask a question.
You could have all your sales in there, and then you can ask it ChatGPT like questions.
Oh, okay.
How many duplicates do I have? What was the
Okay.
what date did I have the leading amount of sales, depending on what kind of data you had?
Okay, I'm asking now, show me duplicates. That's a question, show average rating by year. Okay. All right. Yeah, I didn't know that. So you can actually ask questions within Excel and again, like in ChatGPT, maybe take it, elaborate your prompts, so to say.
The future, I mean, effectively, if you understand what it's doing, it's literally using Excel as a database.
Oh,
Like
okay.
SQL or MySQL or that kind of stuff. And you're querying it through ChatGPT like you would with a query editor or something like that, like you would with SQL.
Mm-hmm.
So effectively, they've converted Excel documents into databases that don't require code, and you can ask it advanced questions, and it'll tell you advanced features.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So those are the two hacks I'm sharing.
Nice, man. Nice. Yeah, that is amazing. I had no idea we were going like this way, into this whole scenario of AI. I mean, which is oftentimes the last topic in the conversation these days. I mean, nobody can run from it, and it's just too relevant to ignore it, right? But yeah, I really appreciate your sharing on this. So yeah, it gives me, and I guess also for our audience, a few very interesting insights here. Some amazing tips. Your life story, Peter, was mesmerizing. I mean, how he went from Argentina to translating a tax document to becoming now a specialist, not only in sales tax and all this stuff. I don't even know all these words.
And technology too.
And technology and coding and now AI some more. So yeah, I mean, I'm very impressed, and I'm very honored to having had you here to hear your story. And yeah, let's make people see it and share it all over the webs. I will ask ChatGPT how to do that later.
Yes.
And yeah, thanks so much for your time, man.
Thank you, Dano. Take care.
Take care.
All right, bye.